Hey, you may be running an organization, or you may be on the board of directors for a nonprofit, or for a for-profit company, or you may be a programmer, or you may be an accountant. Whatever your role is, it is helpful for us to understand what is going on with the company. How can we design our processes and our systems and our organization to create the behavior we are looking for and the results we want. So I'm going to talk about a few key principles for navigation and assessments of the company. All right, high level view. Here you have the space shuttle taking off, and then here you have something very bad happening. So similar to an organization, everything has to work correctly for something very complex and very difficult to work. 70% of the organizational changes fail. That's a very high percentage. And we don't have time to try different things, to try the flavor of the month. We must resort to something that is reliable, predictable, produces predictable and reliable results every time, with or without your knowing, whoever you are, whatever your role is. So we are looking for something that would always help us and very reliable. And everything is constantly changing. So the two things which are constant are changes and principles. So we are going after principles. Dr. Covey is the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and also principle-centered leadership. Personal and interpersonal effectiveness, the principles are in the 7 habits, and the managerial and the organizational effectiveness, the principles are in the book, Principle-Centered Leadership. So principles, how does an airplane fly, right? From the Wright brothers until now, there has to be a thrust, which will create the lift, and the gravity will create the drag. So when the lift and when the thrust is strong enough, the lift is greater than the drag, and the airplane becomes airborne. But it's much more than that, right? There has to be balance and everything else. So when we are looking at the situation, we are thinking about it, oh yeah, who is right, who is wrong, what's the right thing to do? How can we, what filter or what paradigm or what model we use decides our success? So the question is, when you use a filter, a point of view, you want to make sure that your point of view of how to fly an airplane is correct, that you do have the lift and the thrust and the drag, and that you have taken everything into consideration. And if you are not aligned, if I'm not aligned with the correct principle, I'm not going to succeed. That is a given. You have a paradigm, the way I see things, and if what I see is not principled, my behavior is going to be unrealistic, maybe abusive, oppressive, ineffective at best, and then I'm not going to get what I'm looking for. So in a company, we can focus on the mission, the customer, the competition, the distributor, the employees, the structure, or the systems and the program. But what is the right thing to do, right? Because the company can have all of these, maybe the best of class, and still fail. Peter Drucker, the father of modern management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. And both are principle-centered. There are principles that will guide you to do the right things, and there are principles that will help you or make sure that you do the thing right. So if we want to go to the moon, that may be the right thing to do, we must have the correct principles to get there, right? So principles make you ever lasting. They will protect you and guide you as they have me. and many organizations through the battles of life and death. All right. So what we put at the center of our work, for example, or at home, are the principles. Why is that important? That's important because our guidance, what we do, the power we derive independently of your boss, your coworkers, and the leadership team, and the wisdom that you have, and the security that you have in that you are doing the right thing. Whatever you put at the center of your paradigm, of your core, of your being, you derive guidance, security, power, and wisdom. So it's a very important thing to place one's center in principles. Hence the book, Principle-Centered Leadership. Dr. Deming, the father of quality. Best efforts are essential. Unfortunately, best efforts, people charging this way and that way without guidance or principles can do a lot of damage. And he said this 40, 50 years ago. So a very brief, quick summary. This is really to convince somebody that they can navigate using principles, and they would have the ability, even they may not be in the room, they may not be in the group of leadership, but at least they can assess the situation. At the personal level, the guiding principle is trustworthiness. Trustworthiness has two components to it, character and competence. Character is that you will do what you say you will do. You have integrity, you have accountability, you have ownership, you know how to collaborate. And competence is that you have the skill, or you know how to learn the skill. That's trustworthiness at a personal level. Interpersonally, right? How do you collaborate? How do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with differences? How do you get to synergy? How do you go for win-win rather than win-lose? So there are a lot of key principles interpersonally. When somebody comes attacking you, what's the best way to achieve harmony? How can you de-escalate? So there are many, 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 many key principles at all different levels, but I would just talk about a few to try to convince you that principle-centered leadership is very important. Managerial empowerment, yeah, give them the context, tell them what your goal is, try to fire the inspiration and give them a vision to strive for. But then at the same time, a goal without a method is madness, right? You want to go to the moon. How? What, how much money do we have? How much technology do we have? And managerial, even though we don't want to micromanage, we want to give people the context, we want to give them stewardship, delegation, but it is just as important to ask for a plan. What are your steps? Especially when a group is new together, when they are going to the forming, storming, norming, performing stages, we need to work more closely with them to make sure they stay on track. It is not laissez-faire, right? So you ask for the plan, you try to understand what plans, what steps, what tasks, what approach, what timeline, what people they are going to use to achieve the goal as part of the delegation. Organizationally, you want to make sure the macro systems, the organizational vision, mission, the strategy, the structures, the systems, and the managerial styles and skills, and how you deal with people, how do you drive out fear, and how do you make sure that the organizational transformation is based on individual transformation. And the point being, if one deviates somewhat from some of this, one may be able to survive, but there are some key principles. If one violates, then it's not going to work. It's going to blow up like we saw in the previous slide. So we must not create a hostile work environment. We must be honest. We must not do illegal things. So there are some must not do's, and that we have to remember. All right. Work is all about work, right? So it's really paying close attention to the fine details of any operation. Once again, it is not micromanaging, but it is being meticulous and and excellent in what the company is doing based on the individual. So here is one basic principle. Systems, a company is a system with many interdependent, collaborative organizations cross-functionally. And when the systems or the processes, the end-to-end process from requirements to IT to engineering to accounting to finance to shipping to manufacturing, it's a long production line, long process. If something is wrong with the output, we must understand that it is from the system and not confuse a common cause problem with a specific cause. What does that mean? That means here you cannot say somebody is a bad driver here, right? Nobody got drunk and slowed the traffic down, right? So common cause versus special cause. It is very important, even though it's very difficult sometimes to control oneself, but do not treat common cause problems as a special cause caused by a specific person. How healthy are most of your projects? If they are all melting and not coming together, you have a common cause, holistic systems problem. And the best system will be the good person every time. If you are in a relay race, 6 people in a race, 4 people in a race, you cannot just come down on one person unless that same person keeps on dropping the baton. But if the overall relay, the production process is very slow and is disjointed, and you need to look at the system, you need to look at the culture. All right, same idea here. A leader can focus on the output and demand results by giving them the requirement. However, it's very important to understand the process, not about micromanaging, but it's part of the review, part of sharing the knowledge the organization has accumulated and the people are aware of. So yes, it's important to keep the context and not try to control the people, but monitoring and stay close to the work by understanding the next steps is very important so we don't become unrealistic. A goal without a method is nonsense. Stewardship agreement is great. You have guidelines, you have the failure path. So you talk about all these things to make sure you have a full delegation, the context, and people understand what they need to do. But then after this, you have the schedule, you have the approach. You will look at those things and then figure out, is it realistic? Are we gonna get to the moon? So failure rate once again. And when it comes to changing an organization, changing some result, changing behavior, that is extremely difficult and dicey. It is whenever it comes to culture, you have habits, you have lifelong habits of individuals. And that's why taking a class like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People to a company, that essentially is the organizational-wide forming, storming, norming, and performing. Rather than storming, you come in and you say, these are the rules, these are the principles we want to play by, or we shall play by. And then the people become aware of what are the principles, then they will see, they will judge for themselves whether the principles are good or not, and not being oppressed to do it. They would have the desire to do it, then they will know how to do it, they will understand how to do it, and they will know how to do it. They have the ability, then you keep on reinforcing that. And that's how culture will change. The law of the harvest says, the principle of the law of the harvest says, you cannot sow in the spring, play all summer, and expect to have an abundant harvest in the fall. We must go through the proper steps to prepare the ground, to prepare the field, to fertilize, to seed, to weed, to do everything we need to do to get the results we want. So anyways, that's pretty much what I wanted to share at a high level. Once again, the, what you call it, the principle-centered leadership is fairly complex. It's actually confusing. At any one time, there are always multiple prevailing principles, and some of them are contradictory. So it takes experience, and then to really go through and learn, in my mind, the key principles, it will take very many days of of detailed study, education, training, application, feedback, and so on. So anyways, best of luck to everybody on Earth. Thanks.